Hello and welcome to Center Circle. This is a podcast about soccer, aka football, aka the beautiful game, and all things related to it. I am your host, Alex McIntyre, and welcome to episode 2 of the podcast. Shout out to everybody who's already listened to the first episode and shared it around and given me some feedback on it. I really appreciate you listening. Really appreciate the love. Keep sharing it around. Keep giving me suggestions and things. I really appreciate it. But yeah, now for episode 2. In episode 1, I gave an introduction to myself as the host, to kind of what the idea of the podcast was going to be overall, which, just for a little recap, is talking about soccer from my perspective as a fan of the game, as somebody who lives in Atlanta and is a fan of Atlanta United and international soccer and women's soccer and all that. And we talked a little bit about the 2026 World Cup and just kind of laid some of the groundwork for what's happening right here, right now in North America. Fun fact, I recorded that episode about 2.5 weeks ago now, as of the time of that recording. So today we're going to go over some key takeaways from all the action that's happened so far. The group stage is officially done, and we're moved on to the knockout rounds of the World Cup. And we're going to talk about some key things about what's happened, what's coming next, and I have some thoughts about some of the peculiarities of this year's tournament that I've just been kind of working through in my brain and want to put out there somewhere. So to take a recurring John Green bit from the Vlog Brothers video channel, this episode comes to you in 3 parts. Part 1 is recapping the last 2 weeks of World Cup action. This is going to be the longest section because a lot of things have happened in the last 2 weeks. I did enjoy the fact that the first episode was about just under 30 minutes. We'll see if we get there in this one. Let me know how I did. After 72 games, we now know who is in the knockout rounds of the World Cup. The group stage is over. Just to remind you, there were 12 groups labeled Group A through Group L, and there were 4 teams in each group. Each of those teams played 3 games, one against each of the other people in their group. We'll talk about kind of what the criteria was for everybody to move on. But as it stands, we have 32 teams that made it to the next round of the World Cup. Everybody else, unfortunately, goes home. So in Group A, we have Mexico topping the group and South Africa also making it through. In Group B, we have Switzerland, Canada, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. In Group C, we have Brazil and Morocco making it through. In Group D, the U.S. men's national team, Australia, and Paraguay. We've got Group E, where Germany, Ivory Coast, and Ecuador made it through. Group F, with Netherlands, Japan, and Sweden. Group G, Belgium and Egypt made it to the next round. Group H was Spain and Cabo Verde. Group I was France, Norway, and Senegal. Group J, Argentina, Austria, and Algeria. Group K, we've got Colombia, Portugal, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo making it through. And last but not least, in Group L, England, Croatia, and Ghana made it through. And breathe. Man, that's a lot of teams. All 32 making it to the next round. Again, this is a 48-team tournament, an expanded format compared to like the most recent years of FIFA World Cup action. So the group stage is done. A lot of things happened. I've pulled some sort of key things I've been thinking about and noticing. I'll just kind of put them into some buckets for you guys. So first up, the most dangerous teams in the tournament. Right now, France and the Netherlands and Argentina look practically unstoppable. You know, they've let in a goal here or there, but their goal differences are among the highest of those that have won their groups. They look just so dangerous, and And yeah, I think they all three stand a pretty good chance of making it really far in this tournament. France look like one of the favorites to win coming in, and they are certainly looking the part. Um, Argentina, the previous winners, I mean, they have Messi. What more could you want? The rest of the team is also pretty strong. And yeah, the Netherlands are making a very strong case for themselves. They scored 10 goals in 3 games versus Japan, Sweden, and Tunisia. Not the easiest thing to do. So shout outs to them. Mexico, have to point them out as one of only 3 teams to win all 3 of their group games. The U.S. has shown way more potential than I think we all would have hoped going in. The first 2 games, they looked really strong. The last game against Turkey was not their best. It did go all the way to stoppage time at the end of the game where they lost, and they had rotated the squad, just to keep some people fresh and to prevent some people from getting another yellow card and being out of the next game that they were guaranteed to be in the round of 32. But not the best end to the group stage, but that's neither here nor there for this conversation. Next up, Spain. They also joined Mexico as one of only 2 teams to not concede a single goal during the group stage. Defensive stalwarts for sure. Belgium and Brazil are going into the tournament. Morocco and Norway are showing themselves to be really tough. A lot of good teams to look out for as we move forward in the World Cup. I want to shout out the success of the 3 host nations. The hosts of a World Cup are guaranteed to be in the tournament. They're guaranteed entry, but they're not always guaranteed to make it. Just because you are hosting the World Cup doesn't necessarily mean that you're good. But yeah, Canada and the U.S. and Mexico have all made it to the next stage and looking not too shabby about it. Mexico's quality has been impressive. From the first game against South Africa, they've looked like they're always going to score. Their defense has been really good. A lot of high energy games. I mean, they're playing between Mexico City and Guadalajara, and the energy down there is incredible. So hats off to the Mexican national team. I think they're going to do pretty well in these next couple of stages. As for the United States and Canada, both have shown some pretty impressive quality so far, and also maybe a couple warning signs here and there. Christian Pulisic, Fuller and Balogun, Diamond's little brother, aka Alex Freeman, Austin Trusty, Gio Reyna. They've all impressed. Serginho Dest as well on that right flank. He's really he kind of came up into the team as a right back, but he's been really good as a right winger. So that's been good. So yeah, throughout the first 2 games, they all performed really solidly as a team. Tyler Adams kind of holding it down in the midfield as he's finally healthy, thank goodness. But as the game versus Turkey showed, depth is a problem for this team, and you could tell that there was a decent quality gap between the heavily rotated squad that started out the game and then when some of the usual starters subbed in late in the game, especially Pulisic coming back from the injury he suffered in game 1. You could tell that the team played much noticeably better when the usual starters came back in. Makes you wonder a bit about Pochettino's decision not to include more defensive midfielders in the 26-man roster. Sebastian Berhalter did his best. He scored a goal and an assist, which I think is the first time that's happened for the men's national team in a World Cup. So shouts to him. But there's high intensity players like Diego Luna that are missing. There's only 4 quote unquote midfielders on this roster. Gotta wonder how that'll play out as the tournament moves on. Canada, you've got players like Jonathan David scoring goals, Tejan Buchanan looking really lively. Alphonso Davies is finally returning from another injury. They've had their ups and downs so far this tournament. Really gruesome injury to Ismail Kone. They, don't always look like scoring, but they've managed to pull it out so far. They made it through the group with 4 points, a win, a tie, a loss. So they'll be fine. They're doing pretty okay. We'll see how things go through the knockout tournaments for them. It will not be easy, but for Canada, they're doing pretty dang good. So congratulations to all the Canadian fans out there. Teams to not count out. I mean, obviously, all of them. This is the World Cup. They all made it to the biggest stage, right? But beyond the favorites, beyond the hosts, you got teams like Japan and Ivory Coast and Senegal and Egypt and Congo, who are going to cause legitimate problems for the big teams. Bosnia and Herzegovina, also, they're playing the United States in their knockout game. So keep a lookout for those teams. They play some fun ball. You never know what they're going to do, which is always exciting. Also, shout out to so many African teams having strong showings at this World Cup. A stunning 9 out of 10 teams advanced from the group stage this year. Easily a record for AFCON. Really showing out well for soccer on the African continent. You love to see it. And yeah, so next bucket, star power. You're never sure like who's going to make their mark in the World Cup, but some teams just kind of work like clockwork and some players just kind of work like clockwork. Messi is the Golden Boot leader with 6 goals in 3 games. He played 20 minutes in the third group game, scored off a free kick. Love him or hate him, he executes. He's a magician of the game. There's a reason they call him the GOAT. Cristiano Ronaldo looked kind of absent in games 1 and 3 for Portugal. It was killer, absolutely killer in game 2. You can never truly count him out, but when the team isn't kind of functioning well around him, he kind of just sort of is there and is kind of taking up space. We'll see how it goes for Portugal, how they decide to handle that going forward. For France, Kylian Mbappe and Ousmane Dembele both have 4 goals. Dembele had a hat trick in the first half versus Norway. Norway did rotate their team, not to take anything away from Dembele, but 3 really good goals. Again, the entire France team is absolutely stacked. I don't really have many worries about them, just for the teams that are going to have to face France going forward. For Brazil, Vinicius Jr. has 4 goals. Erling Haaland also has 4 goals for Norway. They're scary when he's on. Lamine Yamal has been coming back from a light injury that he suffered towards the end of the club season coming into the World Cup. But especially in game 2, he looked really lively. And then for England, Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham feel like they've finally started to come alive throughout the 3 games that England's team has started to look like something. And Marcus Rashford and Bukayo Saka both look like legitimate problems on their respective wing positions. So expect those guys to all make a big impact, or not. If they don't make an impact, their teams are probably in trouble. Except for France. I think France will be fine. There are a lot of surprises in the group stage, as there always are. You never really know what's going to happen. Shout out to Cape Verde, Cabo Verde, holding off Spain, holding off Uruguay. They came in second in their group with 3 draws. Their goalkeeper, Vozinha, just making world-class saves left and right throughout the group stage. Shout out to them. Other surprises on kind of the negative end, South Korea not getting the job done. They fell out of the group stage in 3rd place in goal differential. Really surprising considering the players that they have on that team. Their coach has already resigned, and that's going to be a whole situation over there. Also, Uruguay crashed out of Group H in a pretty ugly way, which is unfortunate given the talent of the squad, as well as their big name coach in Marcelo Bielsa. That last game versus Spain, they just never truly looked like scoring, and they looked frustrated, and there were some ugly fouls. And you just hate to see a good team crash out of the tournament like that. I saw a stat I think Ben and Blazers posted it, where Uruguay has not won a game at the World Cup without, longtime striker Luis Suarez. So they got something to think about as their soccer federation moves forward. All right, at the end of the section, I want to give some honorable mentions to some of the teams. Iran, heartbreakingly, didn't make it into the knockout stages. They nearly pulled out a win at the death against Egypt on Friday. And then the Algeria-Austria game, thought Algeria was going to pull out a win and then Iran was going to make it through, but then Austria came right back, tied that game up. So Algeria and Austria go through. Iran is just barely out on goal difference for making the knockout stage. So, but they looked good. They had to go through a lot in this tournament. Again, they had very little allowance to be in the United States. There's, the whole thing's going on. But shout out to them for persevering and almost making it to the knockout stage. Democratic Republic of the Congo, they had a great win versus Uzbekistan in Atlanta. Lots of hustle and lots of heart, and that 3-1 win to make it into third place and get out of the group stage. They actually topped the third place standings, so extra shout out to them. Everybody's having fun in the stands. You love to see it. From the fan perspective, gotta give a strong shout out to even though the Scotland team didn't do so well, the Tartan Army, their fan base, made a really strong impression, especially out in Boston. Someone said that the Tartan Army has done more for U.S.-Scottish relations than the government ever could, and they just have so much fun, and you love to see it. That's what soccer's all about: is celebrating your team and having fun with each other. And you've seen a lot of that at this World Cup. You always do, but it's especially great to see it for this year's World Cup. Also, on that same note, want to mention the Norwegian fans and the Viking Row, which has taken this World Cup by storm, just like the Iceland Viking chant did at the Euros several years ago. And the Netherlands fans showing up in droves. So shout out to the Dutch. You guys look like you're having a great time. Last honorable mention, at the time of this recording, the South Africa and Canada match has already wrapped up. Canada pulled out a win in the end, but shout out to South Africa for some really strong goal line defending. Rowan Williams especially made some incredible saves in goal. And that team really came back from a bad first game showing versus Mexico to have a good group stage overall. Also, we never got to see them play in their away kit, and their away kit is gorgeous. So props to South Africa for that. All right, that's the end of part one. Got to check in on the Brazil versus Japan game, and then we will get to part two. BRB. All right, so for part two of this episode, we've got a semi-detailed overview of how the 2026 tournament is set up and what's going to happen next as far as like the structure of the tournament is concerned. So, like I mentioned earlier in the episode, this World Cup was made of 48 teams, 12 groups of 4 teams where everybody played each other once within their groups. The top 2 teams out of every group advance, and also some of the third place teams from each group, 8 out of the 12 move on to the knockout rounds. There's a round of 32 where each team plays each other once. Winner moves on. A round of 16, quarterfinals, semifinals, and then the final, which will happen on Sunday, July 19th. So mark your calendars if you're looking for the biggest game. The round of 32 matchups are already set. I already mentioned South Africa versus Canada, but I'll just kind of run you through the rest of those games real quick. We've got Germany versus Paraguay, France versus Sweden, the Netherlands versus Morocco. You've got Portugal versus Croatia, Spain versus Austria, USA versus Bosnia, Belgium versus Senegal. You've got Brazil versus Japan, which is on right now. Ivory Coast versus Norway, Mexico and Ecuador, England and Democratic Republic of the Congo, Argentina and Cape Verde, Australia and Egypt, Switzerland versus Algeria, and Colombia versus Ghana. It's going to be a big week. So with those 32 teams set in the round of 32, you might be wondering how they decided on who made it to the knockout stages out of all the third place teams. I've looked up the requirements that FIFA set out ahead of the tournament, and here they are in order of importance, the determining factors for the ranking of the third place teams in each group. You've got who had the most points throughout all the group matches, goal difference, aka the difference between goals for and goals against over the 3 games, greatest number of goals scored in all group matches, the highest team conduct score, which relates to the number of yellow and red cards that each team collected through the group matches, and that's both players and team officials. So like coaches can be carded during games if they do something they're not supposed to. And then 2 more teams, if they're equal on points, they're ranked according to the most recent published edition of the FIFA/Coca-Cola Men's World Ranking, end quote. So if 2 teams were tied on points, which a lot of them were, there's only so many points to go around in the group stage, you start off ranking them by points. You had a lot of teams with 4 points and then some with 3 points topping the third place rankings. And then you go ranking them on goal difference and then goal scored, etc., to determine their ranking. So the top 8 teams out of 12 made it through, which led to a lot of drama and heartbreak in the final days that I mentioned some of earlier. The third place teams that made it, Congo topped that list. Sweden, Ghana, Ecuador, Bosnia, Algeria, Paraguay, and Senegal made it through. So all those teams had 4 points in their group except for Senegal. The more you know. But yeah, there you have it. That's the structure of how this year's World Cup is set up. That's the end of part 2. And now it's time for part 3. It's kind of a funky tournament in a lot of ways. There have been a lot of, we'll call them peculiarities of this year's tournament. There's a lot of things that make this year's tournament just kind of unique that I've been noticing and thinking about. First of which, of course, was the expanded tournament format. 48 teams, more teams going through into the knockout rounds. At least my prediction from like before the tournament started was that the expanded format would leave to teams who would not normally survive the group stage sneaking into the knockout round, just kind of statistically speaking. Which on its face, very exciting, especially for fans of those teams, because as American fans know very well from March Madness, college football playoffs, and even our own Major League Soccer playoff format, rankings can be arbitrary, and ultimately the game is not played on paper or in spreadsheets or in statistical models. They can tell you a lot, but magic happens when you least expect it on the field. And every one of the non-star teams at this tournament has equal chances of either making some magic happen or getting their teams and dreams crushed a few days later than they normally would have. I'll say that I've been way happier than expected with the expanded format. It's been a ton of fun to watch. Several of these teams have gotten their first goals, their first World Cup points, their first World Cup wins, their first World Cup knockout berths, their first World Cup appearances. So that's been really fun to see. The fans have been having a great time. I was going to call it a neutral thing, but I'm actually pretty positive about it. A more chaotic change is the sort of multinational nature of this hosting situation. It's not the first time it's been hosted across multiple different countries, but this year's tournament is spread across 3 different massive countries: Canada, US, and Mexico. 2022's World Cup was hosted in the small nation of Qatar, or Qatar. English doesn't have a set pronunciation. I looked this up. In any case, relatively tiny country. Also played during December because it's hot out there in the desert. In comparison, the 2014 edition was held across Brazil, and that was a massive travel conundrum for visiting teams due to the distances that they had to travel. The United States had to travel a staggering 3,600 miles over the course of just the group stage. And normally we see World Cups held in a single country or countries across smaller distances than, I don't know, most of North America. Brazil likely still has the edge on most travel distance of a tournament in this century. According to ESPN, an average of over 2,000 miles traveled per team during the group stage. This year's pretty close, or I would say like maybe like a decent second place for travel, especially considering that you have teams going, up and down the entirety of the West Coast across their group slate, not to mention the knockout rounds, or, some of them have crossed country borders. So that means that there are travel considerations, there are logistical considerations for those teams. I pulled up some more of the stats on that. Bosnia has had to travel 3,000 miles between Seattle, Toronto, and Los Angeles. Holy cow. Algeria, 2,900 miles between San Francisco, Kansas City, and Houston. England had to make a trip between Boston and Dallas. That's 1,700 miles. Canada flew back and forth between Toronto and Vancouver across the country. Mexico got off easy, though. Only 580 miles between Guadalajara and Mexico City. Host privileges. You take what you get. And you can contrast that with the amount of travel that Premier League teams have to travel for domestic games in England, and even across Europe for Champions League. And you can start to get kind of a comparison for what a lot of players are normally used to, and then what they're having to deal with in this tournament. And that's a lot of travel, but it's even further compounded by the sheer heat of an American summer that, frankly, some folks weren't sure whether some of these teams, especially those from milder climates, were prepared to handle. England and Sweden had to spend some time specifically acclimating to the heat, which, as somebody who's grown up in the South, really funny to see. I'm not going to lie to you. But both those teams made it into the final rounds, so into the knockout rounds. So shout outs to them. They made it work. I am curious to see how the health and intensity of the players holds up as the tournament progresses into its final stages, especially teams and players that are not used to American summers. Right now in Atlanta, it's going to be in the 90s for the foreseeable future. Heat index approaching or past 100, humidity out the wazoo. The rest of the South is going to be like this. The rest of the East Coast is going to be beyond humid for sure. If you're playing in Atlanta, you're lucky because you get to play in the dome that is Mercedes-Benz Stadium, aka Atlanta Stadium, because FIFA doesn't let sponsors that aren't part of the FIFA sponsors keep the names on their stadium. FIFA's weird about it. I digress. Not all these games are going to be held in domes. The final is going to be held at MetLife Stadium, which is open air. We'll see what happens. Very curious to see how this turns out. Hey guys, it's Editing Alex here, and in the time between I recorded the original bulk of this episode and right now, we've seen a handful of really tight and exciting round of 32 games that I simply have to mention here before I hit post on this episode. In particular, I want to start out with the Brazil and Japan game. Really tight game. Japan went up. They were up 1-0, ended up losing 2-1, but they defended their butts off. They absorbed a ton of pressure from the Brazilian team. Brazil didn't quite look that good, and then they slowly found their confidence. Japan got tired. Brazil ended up winning. So the Japanese team really showed out well for themselves. I thought they had a legitimate chance to beat Brazil the way that game was going. So they should be proud of themselves. The Japanese fans should be proud of that team. Brazil should start asking themselves some questions about their quality and their kind of headspace going into the rest of the tournament, because they didn't look that great in comparison to how we're used to seeing Brazilian teams. Paraguay and Germany. Paraguay held on for dear life for the upset. They scored and then defended like it was their entire jobs, and it worked. So shout out to them. That was a really exciting game to watch. It helped that Germany never looked consistently dangerous. Matias Galarza for Paraguay was everywhere. The announcers were constantly giving him shout outs. Orlando Heel in goal, absolute monster. My mom and I were hooting and hollering from the couch watching him make all those saves, and really special moment for Paraguay to get into the next round there. Netherlands and Morocco, super physical game. I don't know how more yellow or red cards weren't shown in that game. Those guys were absolutely going at each other. Morocco went out on penalties. France really built into the game against Sweden, won 3-0. Didn't really look like they were breaking a sweat. Mbappe really looks like that dude out there right now. He's tied for most goals in the tournament with Messi. Michael Olise, shout out to him. He's an insane athlete and soccer player. He almost scored an absolute world-class goal on a super acrobatic bicycle kick. Mexico and Ecuador. Mexico low-key bossed them. Ecuador is no slouch. That was a rough game to watch, especially like in the rain, and there were just fouls everywhere. But Mexico, in the end, comfortable 2-0. Congo and Senegal put up really valiant fights against England and Belgium, but both failed to hold on to their leads. They should also both be super proud of how they played in this tournament, losing to England and Belgium. The U.S. looked like a properly scary attacking team against Bosnia. They lost Balogun on a red card that I think should have been a yellow, but their attacking play was nice, and they really held on with a lot of defensive grit to beat Bosnia 2-0. All right, that is it for now. Let's get you to the outro of this episode. Peace. All right, that is the end of today's show. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back with another episode after hopefully the round of 16 or the quarterfinals, somewhere in there. There's an exciting bunch of games coming up, and hope you guys get to watch some. Hope you guys learned a little something, or at least enjoyed me talking about soccer. I had a good time, so thanks for being here. If you liked what you heard so far, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave a rating if you feel so inclined. People say that helps, so if you feel like it, go for it. I'll take it. Share with a friend who loves soccer or who's getting into soccer right now. It'll help a ton as far as the reach of what we've got going on here. If you're into the social media thing, you can find the show on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Center Circle Soccer Pod, and on Blue Sky at Center Circle Soc Pod. That's SOC Pod. And if you have any questions or suggestions for things to talk about, send me a DM or an email at centercirclesoccerpod@gmail.com. Music and artwork for this podcast are by yours truly. I've been told I didn't mention that the last episode, so I made the music, I did the artwork. And I've also left some sources from today's research in the show notes for you guys to check out. A couple of cool maps. If you like graphs, you'll have a good time. So get in there. And yeah, I think that's all for today. Until next time, stay breezy, drink some water, watch some soccer, and I'll see you next time. Deuces.